That's Jimmy Stein. I'm Clint Lamb, and this is the Cover Crimson YouTube channel. Jimmy, first time we've had to have this conversation as far as Alabama having a loss in a while, but wouldn't say it's completely out of left field when you lose the turnover battle 3-0. You lose on special teams in dramatic fashion. I mean, it was very lopsided in that facet. And then, you don't do what you need to do offensively as far as running the football consistently enough. This is going to mount, all kind of create a loss. And that's exactly what happened. 23-21 final score. The fact that all of that went against Alabama and they didn't do what they needed to do in those areas and they still came up just 2 points short, I think that it does paint a certain picture. But overall, tough loss for Alabama in a time that they really could have solidified a spot in the college football playoff and more than likely a spot in the SEC championship.
Yeah, it was really disappointing. The game was weird. Here's how weird. If you'd have told me Saturday morning Alabama was going to double Oklahoma's yardage, 400 and something to 200 and something. If you told me that, Ty Simpson would have the stat line that he had, if you told me Alabama was going to outrush Oklahoma, if you told me all that stuff Saturday morning, I would have said, boy, Alabama stomped the Sooners. That's incredible. You stomp them. Conversely, if you'd have told me Saturday morning Alabama was going to be -3 in turnovers, Alabama was going to have a complete special teams meltdown, I would have told you that Oklahoma was going to win, probably going away. I mean, there was the ingredients here for an Alabama blowout. There were also ingredients for a complete humiliation. You ended up, when you add it together, Alabama loses a close football game. It was just disappointing in the sense that, hey, even week one, Florida State lined up and beat Alabama. There was no – I mean, I know Florida State's not as good as Alabama, but they beat Alabama that day. They just lined up, smacked them around, took them out in the woodshed. There was a spanking involved, all that stuff. You just flat out got beat by Florida State. I feel the Oklahoma game's loss is much different. Alabama gave so much of this game away between the three terrible turnovers and the special teams gaffes from the joke that was that Connor Talty field goal, which was a joke in multiple ways, not just one. That's rare that you could have that many disasters on just one field goal snap. And the fumbled punt and allowing Oklahoma to return a ball well into Alabama territory that resulted in a score for them, where Oklahoma never had to move the ball more than 41 yards all day to score a point. If you remove, Clint, just one of those myriad of mistakes, just one, Alabama wins the game. But nope, you did all of those things, and it just added up to too much. And credit Oklahoma. Last thing I'll say on this rant is that, hey, credit Oklahoma, very good football team, elite defensively. A lot of the mistakes that Alabama made were forced because Oklahoma is very, very good. There's just not a defensive coordinator in college football any better than Brent Venables. Just ask Clemson and their fall since he left. And I do give Oklahoma a lot of credit. That was a good football team. It wasn't like week one where you got whipped by an inferior football team. Oklahoma's very good. There's no shame in losing to a team that's going to make the college football playoff. But there is a little shame in how Alabama went about it.
I think that's fair. As you said, the game was very strange because there were things that pointed in Alabama's direction. But I will say, to kind of counter that a little bit, Oklahoma never needed to have many long sustaining drives. When you get 3 points off of a large punt return, you get a pick six, you get actually it was I think after Ryan's it was the touchdown. So 3 off of the big punt return, 7 off of a pick six, 7 after the Ryan Williams fumble, and 3 more after Ty's fumble. That's 20 of your 23 points. That is, I mean, you essentially had one drive where you drove the length of the field and you scored points. Otherwise, you were not gifted because they had to take away the football. They had to have a punt returner break a Lottie Brooks tackle and take it a good ways to put them in a position where they could kick a field goal. So it's not like Oklahoma had to have a ton of yardage. When you're constantly getting the short fields, like you got to think about it from Alabama's perspective. When you get 129 yards off of just two back-to-back drives, and the reason they were back-to-back is because you drove a good ways. I think they had roughly 50-something yards, throw the pick six. Then they go back out there and they have like 70-something yards on a touchdown drive to kind of counteract that a little bit. That's a huge chunk of your yardage on just two drives. That's going to create some lopsidedness to this game. So I do want to add context to it so people fully understand that it wasn't like Oklahoma couldn't move the football at all on Alabama, even though there was a reason in a lot of those instances they were having to settle for field goals. Alabama's offense or special teams was putting them in poor situations where they were already pretty much in the red zone, especially with that kicker who, in my opinion, is easily the best kicker in college football, and they were still holding them to field goals, not touchdowns. They allow one touchdown in that instance. I would say that the defense overall played a really good football game, and we'll go ahead. Actually, you know what? We're going to hold off. We're going to start. It's a loss. People are wanting to be upset. We're going to let them stew in that a little bit. Let's talk about Alabama's offense against Oklahoma's defense. What were your thoughts on Ty Simpson? What were your thoughts on the run game? Like just anything that you saw. In a lot of ways, it was par for the course based off of what we were expecting. But I also think to an extent, Alabama ran the ball a little more effectively than a lot of people thought that they would going into the game.
First of all, for Ty, stats can be deceiving. Stats don't lie, but they can be deceiving. Ty's stat line looks pretty good. I mean, there was the only one interception. He completed quite a few passes for quite a few yards. A big chunk of Alabama's 412 yards came via the passing game, as usual. And there was a lot of good things there. But I think overall, this was probably Ty's worst game since Florida State because there were just too many bad plays. There were too many negative plays, too many poor throws, too many missed receivers. I even think, I won't be able to spit it out at you, but I even think there were some pre-snap reads that maybe weren't that great, and that is something that Ty has been really outstanding with. I think, again, credit Oklahoma Invendables for confusing Ty a little bit. I mean, he's the best in the business at that. But I didn't think Ty was great at all, and I think Ty would like to have a lot of that game over again. I think he's better than what he showed in this particular game. And how much of that was Ty, how much of that was Oklahoma, I'm not sure. I'm sure opinions will differ. But Ty just wasn't great. I think it was his worst game since Florida State. I think the run game in so many ways was better. I mean, you sort of outrushed Oklahoma. Now that's kind of like saying, Jimmy Stein dunked on you. I mean, you outrushed Oklahoma. They're not good at running the ball, and Alabama's defense is really good. And I think Alabama ended up with, roughly 56 or 58 yards. It just happened to be a few more yards than Oklahoma. But you did outrush Oklahoma. And Daniel Hill probably had a game so good you have to question whether we should go forward and it kind of be the Daniel Hill show. I thought he was almost significantly better than Jam Miller in the game. But overall, Alabama's run game continues to be bad and a major reason for the loss. And what was once a pretty good pass protection group, that's gone downhill. The backs have struggled lately in getting their blocks. The wide receivers were pretty good, but not awesome. Thought Ryan would kind of maybe go off. Ryan's been banged up. I've talked about that all year on the show. Ryan's been banged up. The fact that they used him as punt returner and that dual punt return thing, and we'll talk about that later because I was a little outraged by it. But the fact that they use Ryan in the punt return role should sort of signal to everyone that Ryan's healthier, I think, than he's been at any point, this season. The fact they were expanding his role. But he didn't particularly step up and, of course, had the turnover on the punt return. Josh Cuevas, career game. But, again, for as great as Cuevas is as a pass receiver, he's really, really good. This sounds controversial when I say it, but I think it's easy to back up. I think he's Alabama's best pass receiving tight end since O.J. Howard. Now, is he O.J. Howard? No, he's absolutely not O.J. Howard. But he might be Alabama's best pass receiver at the tight end position since then. The thing is, he's just not a great blocker, and that's understandable. I mean, he's a pass receiving tight end, so difficult to find guys who excel at both. The handful of guys in the world that are like that all play in the National Football League. But Cuevas was okay, and the offensive line, again, had its typical game where they weren't good enough. It wasn't a disaster up front. It wasn't terrible up front. There's other offensive lines in this league that are terrible. Alabama's is not. But it's not good enough. And the continual shuffling is frustrating to me. It's frustrating to me. It's probably frustrating the players. And to a lot of the fans, it's frustrating to me that you play Jaden Roberts every snap for 2 games and now he doesn't play at all. Maybe that's an injury. Maybe we find that out today. I don't know. But you don't play Jaden Roberts at all. You move Formby inside for an entire game. That's never happened. Michael Carroll's at right tackle for an entire game. That's never happened. And it's just crazy that we get to game 10 seeing things on the offensive line we haven't seen all year. That's frustrating, and I think it contributes to the offensive line having another what I would call off-kilter performance where, again, wasn't terrible. The pass protection was pretty good. It wasn't awesome, but considering who you're playing, the pass protection was pretty good. The run blocking, just hasn't been there all year, or it hasn't been good enough all year. But overall, a really poor performance from the offense in the sense that the mistakes directly led to the loss. There were some good things. Gaining 412 yards against that defense is a win. That shows how good you can be. Daniel Hill having a pretty decent game against that bunch. Josh Cuevas having a good game against that bunch. Ty completing a lot of passes. Again, 412 yards against Oklahoma is a nice performance. There were just too many game-losing mistakes.
I think Oklahoma having 2 weeks to prepare, on top of having Brent Venables and that defensive staff, on top of having a really good defense, that combination presented challenges. I think for the first time, especially with them having 2 weeks, what they probably looked at was, okay, we're going to present this picture. Ty, or if the play clock's still running down and you still got the headset communication open, he's going to look to the sidelines. He's going to get more information from Grubb and company. They're going to check to this when we give them this. We're going to be ready for that to counter with this, where there's going to be quick communication amongst Oklahoma's defense. And you saw that a lot. When Ty was letting things run down, he was making checks, making movement, trying to figure out what he was going to put Alabama in. You would see Oklahoma do some late checks, and they seemed to have a counter for what Alabama was doing. I think they purposefully learned on tape when Alabama's presented this picture that Ty is going to check to this. We're going to have that beater ready to roll and ready to have our guys check to. And I think that was putting Oklahoma, because there was times where it's like, the protection sliding to the wrong direction. You've got a free blitzer coming into the opposite A gap as far as like Parker Brailsford. Like that type of situation happened a couple, too many times for my liking, as far as what Ty Simpson had been really good at versus, because a lot of people are going to say, oh, it's the offensive line allowing a free blitzer. I mean, in a lot of those instances, it's really Ty Simpson not getting his protection in the right look to keep himself protected. And so I think that a lot of that was just some really late checks by Oklahoma. I don't think it was Ty seeing the wrong thing. I think it was Oklahoma making some really late checks where it's down in the play clock. Alabama, at that point, you got to run what you got. And they were, it was a chess game that I think they ultimately lost in that way. That's great defensive coaching. That's having guys, they were without R. Mason Thomas, but they still got pass rushers. And their defensive line, when you look, they weren't overly productive. 2 of their sacks came from an off-ball linebacker. 1 of their sacks came from a cornerback on a blitz. A defensive lineman, Taylor Wan, he was the only one to have a sack. And they didn't have, I think, out of the 13 pressures that they had, only 5 of them came from the defensive line. So it was the off-ball linebackers. There was 2 of them that combined for 6. You had the corner. I think 8 of the 13 came from non-defensive line, defensive front personnel, which, they were aggressive and they had the right things dialed up. And some people will look at that and say, oh, they're stealing signs. They knew what Alabama was doing. I didn't really see anything on tape where it's like at the snap, they immediately knew what Alabama was doing, other than, and I just think this was good defense on the pick 6. They knew based off of bringing that safety, he's going to go hot. Safety rolls down. He's anticipating it. And yes, he got there early. Yes, I don't remember what you call that. It's not, is it pass interference? It might be like illegal touching or some sort of penalty. It's a penalty. I mean, it really is, because it wasn't that
almost like a rub route. I mean, almost like a pick, because they sort of initiated contact with Horton while the ball was in the air.
And he was going to be where the ball ended up going past to the corner.
I thought it should have been flagged, but it wasn't one of those egregiously missed calls like you see every week that I really complain. I'm not complaining. I get, you can turn the volume up to 10, right? I'll complain about that call if the volume turned up to 5 or 6. Yeah. I think it should have been flagged, but it wasn't egregious. And you could argue that the ball wasn't going to be catchable, but there was contact on the intended receiver with the ball in the air.
And it was in the direct line where the ball, like, it was actually going to be a good pass. I think that, other than the safety absolutely sticking Horton, which could have happened, I don't think it was this really off-target throw that just, went over Horton's head into the cornerback's hands. Like, I do think that was a penalty. It should have been called. I will say, just to be fair, as I thought that just simply jumping over a guy on a field goal, I thought if you use him to lift, like opposing players to lift yourself off the ground, I thought that in itself was a flag. Apparently, that is not the case. It is launching yourself or using players to actually block the field goal. He just used them to get over the line. A little bit of a difference, but I think the fact that he landed and then was able to stick a hand up, I think that is why they didn't call a penalty. I want to be fair with that, because I didn't realize that the rule was using someone to get yourself higher. It's essentially to stop players from, you jumping off a player's back to get higher up into the air to block a field goal, because that's dangerous for really you stepping on somebody that can hurt someone. You're getting way up in the air, launching yourself off a player's back. You could come down hard, break something, hurt something. It's to protect that type of situation from happening. But I'm getting off point. Point being is that was, in my opinion, that first one that we were talking about, the pick six, should have been a flag on Oklahoma.
Yeah, and I'm with you on the block field goal. And again, the field goal may have been missed even without the block, and the snap was bad. And then Talty reacted in a way that's getting him a lot of criticism that I think he earned, because I don't like, it's to me like a quarterback screaming at a wide receiver for dropping a ball. I don't like that either. And that's sort of kind of what happened here. And, now I don't blame Talty for, it was a bad snap, and then they had incredible penetration, right up the middle. So I don't put that miss 100% on Talty, but he's got to do a better job of, hey, when the snap gets down, make the kick. In the NFL, they expect you to make the kick. If the snap may be bad, but if the hold's good, they expect you to make the kick at that league. Now I realize we're not in that league, but Talty's got to be better. And the screaming at David Byrd, I didn't like that at all. But hey, it is notable to me that Alabama replaced David Byrd after that, and that wasn't his only bad snap. There had been a couple bad snaps on some of Talty's misses earlier this season. They didn't replace David Byrd because of just one bad snap. It had gone back a couple of games, but they did replace him with Alex Rozier going forward. I'm a Clint as to the penalty. I didn't know you could do it at all. Apparently you can if you're within 1 yard of the line of scrimmage and you don't launch. And so apparently I may be wrong about that, and that's okay, because it's impossible to know all the rules. It's kind of like knowing the entire Internal Revenue Tax Code. When I was a lawyer, I didn't know that either. It's just too big. It's just too much. And the football rule book is the same way. So, what would be great, Clint? This would be great. We'll never see this because for some reason we treat officials a little bit like they're generals at the Pentagon or cardinals in the Vatican. You can't question them. But wouldn't it be great if, like on Monday, the SEC office head official or whoever they want to put on camera comes out on Monday and explains a few things? Hey, this is things we got right. This is why that wasn't a penalty in the Oklahoma game. Here's a little tape. We run it on SEC Network. This is why that wasn't a penalty. This is why this was a good call. This is why y'all stop yelling about this, because this is why this was a good call. And this is where we messed up, because we're human beings and we make mistakes. Just like Alabama fumbled the ball, we fumble too, and because we're human beings, and this is where we messed up. Wouldn't that be great if they Just there was more transparency. Brag on yourselves when you get it right. Apparently, you got it right on the block kick. You may have gotten it wrong on the pick six, but wouldn't that be fun? But instead, we have to treat it like it's war plans, and the officials who are insurance agents Monday through Wednesday are unquestionable wartime generals. On the weekend, I'll never understand that in a million years.
It's. I think the reason they don't do it is kind of like fantasy football analyst, and I'm not trying to take a shot at them because it's not really just this is just a simple, you can say sports people with sports takes in general, but I'll use fantasy as an example. A guy gets 150 takes in the offseason, and then he goes and picks out, hey, I had Drake May as a top 5 quarterback going into this year, and like I'm a genius as a result. They highlight their wins, and then it's like, that's great, you remember that, because like, man, who else had Drake May as a top 5 quarterback? That's incredible, this guy knows his stuff. You actually start going to look at the hit rate, and he had about 47 other takes that were just atrocious that he ignores. He acts like it doesn't happen. But if he went and held himself accountable, then people would realize, yeah, Drake May was a great call, but you missed about 47 as well. It's the same situation with SEC ref, or really just umpiring, officiating in general, is if they highlighted the things that they did get right, it would also expose just how often they're wrong. And I think that it's kind of like people who gamble. If you're doing it a bit by bit, you're losing money. But if you ever went and totaled everything that you lost, wow, I've lost $12,000 in the last calendar year betting ball games. I should probably stop betting ball games. But if you're losing 200 here, 300 there, 400, it's a little bit different. They don't want to really draw attention, in my opinion, to how poor it actually is, even though I agree. I think even to an extent, if you're willing to own the misses, I think that transparency and that accountability would make people a little bit more understanding. But it is this secret, hey, the fact that we're questioning it, and you've got people on both sides saying, how in the world do you not call this a penalty? And then another side saying, this is why you don't call it a penalty. And people are arguing back and forth because a portion of people haven't seen the explanation and understand the explanation or agree with the explanation, that you end up having a lot of uninformed people who are arguing points that make sense because, before it was explained to me, I did say after the game, that was a penalty. He shouldn't have done that. They should have called that. And then I come to find out, I take pride on trying to know as much as I can, but it's like, hey, I was wrong on that. Got to own it for sure, because that's a miss. What I will say is, I'm like 98% sure that pick six was a penalty and should have been called, even though it was a great play at the same time by Oklahoma. Good anticipation, knew what was coming, knew what Ty was going to do based off of what you were giving him, anticipated it, and he just got there early, to be honest with you. That's all it was. But when you get there early, it's pass interference. If that ball's thrown, that's what they're supposed to call. So the fact they didn't, it's unfortunate. Getting back to, the offensive line, different look. I agree with you. It was very strange. Jaden Roberts plays 100% of the snaps 2 weeks in a row, then doesn't play at all. They've been doing this rotation at all these various positions, right tackle, right guard, left guard, and then all of a sudden it is, okay, our right guard, lock him in for 100% of the snaps. Right tackle, who had been rotating with the now right guard, he's going to be locked in for 100% of the snaps at right tackle. Still going to rotate at left guard with Cam Dewberry and Geno Vandenbarton. No Will Sanders, but Parker Brailsford was the center. Caden Proctor was the left tackle. So 4 out of the 5 spots were pretty much solidified, other than moving Caden Proctor around and doing that some of that stuff. Otherwise, it was, pretty much par for the course. That was interesting to me. I just thought, based off of what we had seen from Wilkin Formby earlier in the season at right guard, I thought that was going to be, let's punt that to the offseason. If we think he's a guard, let's get there. Let's give him time to make the transition. And then next thing you know, not only are we going to continue to do that, now he's our full-time guy. Could have been because Jaden Roberts was out, but here's the thing. What tells me that that's not the case is Geno Vandermark to play right guard too. So if you would have even rotated them two, if it's Jaden Roberts is out or injured, you would have rotated those two and then maybe had Cam Dewberry as a full-time left guard, or play Geno Vandermark some at left, some at right, have a 3-man rotation like you did with Tyler Booker back in the day where he's playing both. Geno Vandermark is capable of doing that. Couple of notes. Michael Carroll did whiff pretty bad on the Taylor Wan sack.
Yes.
Taylor Wan is a good player,
Yep.
a really good player. I'm not surprised that happened. Otherwise, I thought he was pretty good in pass protection. I thought Wilkin Formby was good in pass protection. I thought Kim Dewberry was good in pass protection. I thought Parker Brailsford had easily his worst game that I've seen, and that's as a run blocker. I thought he was struggling to lock on targets. I thought he gave up some pressure in the passing game. But here's the thing. He also looked banged up. He had that ankle taped up, and it was not at the beginning of the game. It happened during the game, and he looked hobbled to me. So I think you were playing with a less than 100% Parker Brailsford. His entire game is not size and moving people off the football. It is athleticism. It is like a running back or a receiver. If you take away that athleticism or you limit it because he is injured or hurt, I think that affects him way more than it does your average big, powerful offensive lineman. So that should be noted. Him being asked to pull and get out in space, I don't think he was as effective at it. You saw some problems there. I thought Proctor was pretty good overall. Considering the defensive front they were going against, I wasn't really all that disappointed with the first offensive line. I also don't think that Gino Vandermark was as bad as I initially thought that he was watching it live. But at the same time, there's two plays. Obviously, the sack where he just completely missed the guy. And to me, that was the most critical play in the game because Alabama was driving the football. It set them way back, and they weren't able to overcome it. But not only that, I've seen people blame Ty for short arming the throw on fourth down. I've seen people say that Ryan Williams didn't run a good route on that fourth down throw, that they didn't get it right there at the end of the game. I disagree with both. To me, it was Gino Vandermark. The defensive lineman was able to drive him right back into Ty Simpson's space. Ty could not step into the throw to get any sort of torque on it. And the fact that he's kind of having to do off his back foot a little bit, he just didn't have the arm to get it there based off of that. To me, that is a Gino Vandermark loss. So on that final drive, I think two of the most critical plays were on Gino Vandermark. So while I do think that he played better overall than I initially thought, there were still two glaring issues that ended up helping Alabama lose the football game.
It's very frustrating to me that we get to game 10 and we're doing something we have not seen all year in an attempt to find the five best. And, it's clear to me that if they trust that they have the right guy, they don't rotate. They don't rotate at center. They don't rotate at left tackle. Those are your two best guys. Everybody can see that. Brailsford, who apparently, did struggle a little bit this weekend, but overall, over the course of the season, Brailsford's probably been their best lineman, and Proctor's probably been the second best, and they don't rotate. They rotate the other three spots. And here's going into game 11, and I know it's Eastern Illinois, who doubts that it won't look different? I don't believe that it will be Carroll at right tackle and Formby at right guard and Dewberry at left guard starting the game. It's going to be something else and a different rotation. It's frustrating. Perhaps some offensive line whiz, like the wizard in the movie, can be telling me, oh no, this is how you do it when you don't have a clear guy at number one. I don't know. It just seems to me that this deep into the season, by now, they would have settled on, okay, when you have Proctor at left tackle and Brailsford at center, who are the three best guys? Who is OL3, OL4, and OL5? Figure that out. Who's the third best guy, the fourth best guy, the fifth? And then put them in the best spots they can from there. Because you're trying to find your five best. I've never believed at this level of football that it's about, he's a guard or he's a tackle. To me, he can play or he can't. Chance Warmack was the guardiest guard we had in the Saban era. Never played anything but guard. He was a guard. Went to the NFL, played guard, right? We have put many tackles on the field that would not have been as good of a tackle as Chance Warmack. He's a heck of a lineman. He gets people blocked. Yes, ideally, he's a guard. But he's going to be better at tackle than a guy who's bad at tackle. And that's what I mean by you find your five best and then you figure out the spots. And I don't think that Alabama's done that. And gosh knows they've had a long time to look at it. Now, that said, back on the other side, the offensive line gets too much criticism. Formby gets too much criticism. To me, it's funny. I saw a lot of people on social media and the message boards just blaming it all on Wilkin, and they do this. I guess he's the punching bag for the group. And then PFF, who, again, I don't consider PFF the gospel by any means. I don't think they get it right or exactly right, but it's a pretty good guideline because you got a professional type guy that's looking at this. They said Formby had the highest pass block grade of any of the offensive linemen this weekend. The best.
I didn't notice that, but that's interesting.
Yeah, and now that's PFF. So again, I'm not sitting here verifying it and saying, hey, this is exactly right. But when PFF says he's the best, I'm comfortable in saying, well, maybe that's wrong, but I bet he wasn't the worst.
Yeah.
I bet he wasn't the worst. I bet they got it close to right or in the ballpark of being right. And again, that's I'm just tired of the rotation. But I do think that the Alabama offensive line in general is over criticized. There are bad offensive lines in this league, like Texas. LSU struggles. There's other offensive lines in the league that are bad. Alabama is closer to the top than the bottom. If you're ranking offensive lines in this league, you're going to have two guys that make a ton of all-star teams in Brailsford and Proctor. Very few teams have two guys that will be all SEC or even potentially all Americans. It's not terrible, but it is also not good enough. DeBoer and Grubb know what good enough looks like. They had a Joe Moore award-winning offensive line in 2023 at Washington. They know what real good looks like, and this ain't it. It'd be interesting to go back, Clint. I've not done this, but I'm going to do it because I thought of that this morning. It'd be interesting to go back to 2023 at Washington, their Joe Moore award-winning offensive line, go to their participation charts and see how many times they were rotating up front. I'm guessing before I ever looked, they didn't. I'm guessing they just had five guys. Now, Washington wouldn't have Alabama's depth of talent, but I bet this is a patchwork thing, and I'm not sure it needs to be. But again, the offensive line was okay. It's not the offensive line's 100% fault. Alabama can't run the football. It's part of the problem, but it's not the whole problem. And overall, considering who you're playing, I thought the pass protection was fairly good. You pointed out, and I thought those stats, by the way, were very insightful. It wasn't the defensive front that was pressuring Ty. That means the Alabama offensive line was doing a good job. What was happening were blitzers were coming. Ty was either failing to identify it correctly. Running backs were missing blocks. That's been a thing.
2 of the 4 sacks were on the running backs.
There you go. And as I pointed out all year, I think, and again, I'm certainly not picking on Josh. I am grateful Josh Cuevas is the Alabama tight end. He's a plus. If we're doing plus and minuses, he's a plus. He's also not a premier block. If Josh Cuevas was a great blocker, he would be a cinch to go day 2 of this upcoming draft, at least. A cinch, but he won't because he's not a great blocker. Now he's going to go day 3 because he's a fantastic pass catcher. The NFL will be very eager to use that, at the next level. But Josh is not a great blocker, and he's replacing 500 pounds of great blockers in C.J. Dupree and Robbie Oost. And I do think that's a reason that the run game has suffered from last year to this year.
Yeah, I mean, I would completely agree with that. Number one, Alabama, so third down, they were what? 5 of 13, I believe.
5 of 13. I think that's right off the top of my head.
Yeah, so 5 out of 13. They started 0 for 2. 3rd and 7 didn't convert. 3rd and 18 didn't convert. Big surprise. But then after that, they converted 5 straight. 3rd and 1, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 2. A lot, 1/3 medium roughly, 1/3 and long, but it wasn't crazy. Wasn't 3rd and 10 plus, and then 3 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2s. From that point forward, they went 5 straight or 6 straight, actually, 6 straight where they did not convert on 3rd down. 3rd and 10, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 21. So very streaky as far as the 3rd down conversions. And if you go and look, I mean, on one of their touchdown drives, they didn't even have a 3rd down. It was actually their 7-play, 75-yard touchdown drive to start the second half. Other than that, they were dealing with 3rd downs like you're going to on pretty much every drive. And they were having success. I mean, they converted a 3rd and 1. It was the only 3rd down on the 8-play, 57-yard drive that resulted in a pick six. They went 12 plays for 73 yards and a touchdown. They converted to 3rd and 1. They converted to 3rd and 8. They went 6 plays for 78 yards and a touchdown, 3rd and 6. But here's the thing. On one of those 3rd and 1s that they converted, I don't remember which one, the first or the second, there was the direct snap to Daniel Hill where Ty's acting like he's going to the sidelines. He snaps it. So it's like a, gimmicky. It wasn't lining up and running the football and getting the first down traditionally. It was having to be some trickery involved. You talk about the 3rd and 6 on the long touchdown to Josh Cuevas. Once again, they caught Oklahoma slipping. They pulled that stunt as far as offensive line even stands up. They're acting like they're identifying who's coming, who's going, and then they snap the ball before they even get back down in their stance. And then Cuevas leaks out late, wide open, and he runs in for a touchdown. So some of this 3rd down stuff, they're having to do some trickery. I mean, the 4th down with the Lottie Brooks, you didn't trust yourself to get the 4th and 1. And you certainly didn't need to hand the football off to Caden Proctor. I would have lost my mind if they would have done that in that moment. I don't care what he's done this year.
That and it hadn't worked.
It would have been an absolute right. And give, by the way, the Oklahoma defensive back credit. The pursuit angle that he showed there was as good. I mean, that's textbook when you're trying to teach that stuff. That's tape stuff for sure. Now, here's something else that I want to bring up and talk about, because you say that you were disappointed. You didn't like the whole double return man getting Ryan back there. Let me tell you what I think that is, Jimmy. I think that's looking for explosives, because you're not getting explosives downfield in the vertical passing game. You're not getting explosives with your run game. You've gone with like more of the Daniel Hill. He's a good player, but he's not going to rip off. He's not like this super long speed home run hitting type of running back. The only explosives are the deep passes, roughly 15 to 25-ish yards to your receivers, but it's not vertical shots. I think they're so desperate for explosives, something to help compensate for that they said, we got a very reliable guy in Cole Adams. He's going to catch the football. He's going to fair catch it. And when he's got some opportunities, he'll try to get us some return yardage, but he's not like a dynamic player back there. I think it was the hunt for an explosive that led to that decision. Another thing is that someone mentioned after the game on Saturday night that they felt like it was a low IQ play by Ryan Williams to return that, or I don't know where the low IQ was coming into play. He's doing what the coaching staff told him to do. They put him back there for a reason, and it wasn't to fair catch the football. And he didn't need to anyways. Like, he had room to return it. But I assure you, if they needed a guy to just sit back there and fair catch it and make sure that you didn't fumble the football, it would have been 100% Cole Adams continuing that role. So you can't blame Ryan Williams for doing what he was expected to do by being put out there in the first place, unless he had no business fair catching the football, not fair catching the football, which that was not the case on that particular one. So that's just something I want to point out. How concerned are you about the fact that they feel like they have to do something like that because they can't get the explosives from the offense?
I couldn't agree more. That's exactly why they did it is, boy, we're not doing a good enough job of getting the ball to Ryan or Ryan making a play. And we feel like maybe based on some film study here, we might be able to make a play against their punt defense unit, their punt return defense unit. I get that. And there's some logic behind that. And I'm not saying they're wrong. I would just take the opposite tack of saying that in my experience watching football, that in terms of a punt return, you're more likely to have a bad play than you are to make a great play as a punt returner. And I think a fumbled punt is more likely than an explosive. And by explosive in a punt return, I mean like over 20 yards or over 25 yards. I mean, I don't know what the numbers are. Just to me, your chances of making a major mistake as a punt returner are greater than there are of making a significant athletic play against an Oklahoma. And I like the fact that Cole Adams is so sure-handed and you trust him 100%. I would rather take in this instance I know I'm not going to lose the game guy, as opposed to the let's gamble because we might get a big play here. Now, it's easier for me to take that stance because we saw what happened. Ryan fumbled the ball, and I would say, here we are, game 10. You're doing something for the first time all year. Now, Ryan did a pretty good job returning punts last year, and I trust Ryan Williams. I really do. But he hadn't returned punts all year. And with the season on the line and the SEC championship on the line and the playoffs on the line, I just find it an odd timing to do something you hadn't done all year, and then it ended up being a mistake. So that's my logic behind it. As I just worry about the bad play more than I'm excited about the possibility of a big play. But the telling thing, as Clint points out, it's so bright, is that the staff feels like it must do these things. There's a lot of trickeration going on out there. Grubb has this deep bag of tricks, everything from the fumble stumble thing, which looked really weird to me because it's clear that Jam fell on purpose. And I think Ty fell on purpose, but
it was the Ben Johnson ran that with the Detroit Lions to perfection. So yeah, they had seen that. They call it something. I forget
what they call it. But Ty, by the way, when Ty took the snap, Formby stepped on his foot.
That's what I thought too.
You can watch the tape. He does. Their feet touch. Now, did that cause Ty to stumble, or was that the design the whole time? Because Jam did fall. And what did it get you? You just threw the ball to Cuevas. He's open every time anyway. Cuevas gets open more than any wide receiver we have on the team. Cuevas is always open. So I'm not sure that we gained a real advantage out of it because Josh was going to be open anyway. But
I think that one was to Caleb Edwards.
Oh, was it? Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
right. It was 10. That's a great point. It was the other tight end, and it made a 25-yard play. And I'll give Grubb a lot of credit. Grubb reaches into his bag of tricks, and it often works out. It often does. Even the 4th and 1, where you fake it to Proctor and give it to Lottie. They made the first down, but gosh, you point out number 3 for Oklahoma who made that play. Live at the stadium, and I'm behind where I sit. I'm behind that play. When I saw that they, thank goodness, used Proctor as the decoy and gave it to Lottie, the moment they gave it to Lottie, I was thinking home run. This might be the home run. I loved it. It was great. But boy, number 3 for Oklahoma, like he was shot out of a cannon. Good luck finding the people that walked down Lotsier Brooks, but he did. It was a heck of a play on their part and a good example of this Oklahoma team's really good. You got to take into account who you're playing. I don't know that that's not a touchdown against half the league, but Oklahoma ate it up and ended up being just a short gain against them because, boy, they can not only read it, they get there because they're good. The deep bag of tricks, Clint, is an admission on Alabama's part that we're having to get real creative to find offense. And that's a little alarming this deep into the season.
With what they have.
It's what they have. It's one of the reasons that just 12 days from now, the whole season's on the line in a game at Auburn. And I think we all know from recent trips there, that's going to be just an anxiety-drenched day.
I'm going to say something that's going to, if I had to guess, be taken as pretty controversial. And part of me, like half of me is kidding here. Alabama misses Caleb Downs, the punt returner, more than they did miss Caleb Downs, the safety. Because, I think Bray Hubbard's playing really good football. I think Keon Sa's been pretty good. That you got Zay Mincy. Obviously, Caleb Edwards would upgrade that room. He's one of the best players in college football if you take away position, and is going to be a very high NFL draft pick. But, I think he was starting to get a great feel for returning punts. I think last year for Ohio State, I want to say he averaged like 16 yards per return, over 16 yards per return. And I think right now, Cole Adams is averaging like half of that. So, you're hunting for explosives. I think that kind of plays into it. The other thing too, and I want to get I know we've going kind of long. It's a loss, and we're talking about the good stuff. We won't go as long with the defense, but I did want to get your take on the final drive that ended up being the final drive that I don't think they wanted to be the final drive. That had a lot of people stirred up and upset because they feel like there wasn't a sense of urgency. I just wanted to get your take on that really quick before, I share mine.
When you're backed up, almost no matter the game situation, unless it's desperate, less than 2 minutes left, less than 2 minutes. And Alabama didn't have that. I think they had like 7 minutes when they got the ball, maybe more than 7 minutes. When you're backed up, the first goal to me is disaster avoidance. You can't have a disaster inside the 10-yard line. You can't do that. So I think initially the goal was let's move the ball out away from the goal line. Then let's come up with a plan about getting the ball down the field. And I think that's what happened for the first couple of first downs there. I know a lot of people were upset about the lack of urgency. I was a little upset about the lack of urgency too. I felt it needed to be a more urgent possession than it was, and not a Vanderbilt type four corners possession that it sort of looked like from the outside. Because I think, and I think you agree with this, I think Ty is a more effective quarterback when Alabama's playing faster. Now, I don't want to play fast all 60 minutes because it puts the defense in a bad spot. But I think Ty is a little more effective when you're playing with urgency. He does play with a lot of anxiety, as Nick Saban calls it. He's an anxiety type guy, high strung. But I think unlike Jalen, who was also a high strung, high anxiety guy, in my opinion, at the quarter, unlike Jalen, I think Ty plays a little better when he's all super caffeinated. I think you get a better Ty, and I don't think the pace of play you're going to get Ty's best when you've got what sort of appears to be a slowdown thing going on. And again, I don't know how intentional it was. I wasn't as fired up about it as some of the comments I've seen, but I do agree that there needed to be more urgency. And I like Ty's performance when we play a little faster. And I would like a do-over for that possession and do it a little differently. But I understand being a little conservative when you're back at the 10-yard line, because the first thing is you have to avoid the disaster. You have to walk before you can run. You got to get out of the shadow of the goalpost, or the game could have been over with just one snap, the wrong way.
Yeah, and I've said this, but the goal there is to get out of your own end zone, to where you don't punt the football and hand it to them at the 50-yard line. And with that field goal kicker, they got to go 10 yards before they can kick a field goal. And now you have to score a touchdown. Not saying they felt good about, they weren't playing for a field goal. A lot of people have accused them of that. That is not what Kalen DeBoer was doing. I promise you. I guarantee you. They weren't comfortable in that situation with the way that things had transpired this entire season, but also in this particular game. They got the football with 7:14 left in the fourth quarter. By the time they got in a situation where they had gotten the first down of that drive, there was 5:29 left. That kind of completely changes things, because you're on the 20-yard line, and you've taken a minute and 45 off the clock. But the primary goal there, let's get us out of our own end zone. And then if we have to punt the football, our defense is playing pretty well. We feel pretty good about being able to get a stop, but we also don't want to have a minute and a half left when they punt it back to us. And now we got to go 90 yards because their punt put us right back where we were before, or the 6-yard line, which is where they started that drive. And then after that, by the time they got the second first down, there was like I got it right here, 4:12 left in the game. Now it's like, whoa, now we're kind of, this is going to be, looks to be pretty much the last hurrah. This is our last chance. I also think that it was a sign of their respect for Oklahoma's defense, because they ran the ball 3 times in a row because Oklahoma was giving them the opportunities to run the football. And I think that they were looking at it and saying, okay, we can pick up some chunks here and put ourselves in some favorable situations. If we're in a second and very manageable, Ty can play action off of that. We can kind of have our offense in a position where maybe it can operate where it operates the best. And then there were other times where it's like, okay, it's a short yardage situation. Let's go ahead and make sure that we get the first down. I think there was some of that involved. But running the ball 3 times in a row, I think that it's like, when's the last time Alabama did that? In Oklahoma, despite the fact, hey, they ran the ball, we don't think they're running it again. Oh, they ran it again. Okay, that was strange. Back-to-back runs. Definitely ain't going to do it a third time. Did it again. And these were all successful runs. It just wasn't getting the explosives. And I think that was a theme of the game, where Oklahoma was presenting you opportunities to run the football, but you weren't making them pay for it to the extent that you needed to with explosive runs. They'll live with, we'll give you a run look, and then you pick up 6 yards. We're now in a 2nd 4. It's not the end of the world. You got to snap the football again. If they rip off some 30-yard chunks, Oklahoma's got to switch some things up. They never had to do that in this game.
No one's doing that when they play Missouri.
That's right.
Oh, we'll give you 8 yards on the ground. No, because you're looking at Ahmad Hardy's butt.
That's exactly right.
He's down the field, but they'll do it in Alabama. Yeah, I mean, and boy, that's very smart. And I agree. That's what they were doing.
So it kind of got away from them. And the next thing you know, there's 4:12 left. You've picked up 2 first downs, but you're still only on the your own 33-yard line. So it's not like to a point, but now it's like, all right, this is it. Let's go, boys. Like, this is probably going to be the final one. But then very soon after that, you have the critical sack, which was the biggest problem in the entire game. It's what Oklahoma does, and it's not just sacks. It's negative plays that their defense generates. We talked about it all week going into the game, and it can kill drive killers. And taking that sack, which was not, I mean, it wasn't on Todd. It was on Geno Vandermark. I'm just going to call it what it is. It put them in a situation where they had a lot to overcome. And I thought it was great that Isaiah Horton caught that pass and made it a 4th and manageable situation, because before that it was 4th and not manageable. 4th and 6 was a very manageable 4th down attempt. But once again, Geno Vandermark allows the defensive lineman to overpower him, drive him back into the backfield, back into Ty, and Ty can step into the throw. And the defensive back, he anticipated it. He was in good position. So I don't know that he would have completed it anyways, but it would have had a much better chance had that not happened at left guard. So that's going to do it for the offensive recap from the Oklahoma game. We're not going to be talking about the defense, but that will be on the next episode. Definitely get on over to robat.com. Use the promo code Crimson20 to get 20% off your order, and we will talk to you guys soon.